Cool. So let's start playing with something. Let's create a React app. Let's call it Router Playground.
Let's screen down. If we can make it full screen.
Like that? So let's go back. And this is basically what I want you guys to do at home. Like, if you want to read about a library, just find a good article, or like read multiple articles and find an article that's easy and just follow it and apply the steps. And if it doesn't work, just keep trying, then it works. And the same with GraphQL or Docker or whatever. So usually you're going to find a getting started article that you could get started with. And this is what I did. Like, I had no experience with React Router before. I was working with Meteor, and like the routing system is different. So if I need to learn this, I just check the documentation. If I need to learn something else, I just read about it, try for an hour or two. Then if I fail, I just try another time, and just keep doing it this way. So this is a nice way to learn a new library. Maybe we can do this for the last class. We just take something completely new and for all of us, and we just learn from an article and implement something with it. That's like a day-to-day work. The same with the stuff that you guys do at your work as well. So setting up React Router. So we have a project. We already know create React app and JSX and everything. So it says here that the React Router comprises of 3 packages. React Router as the core library itself, that's an NPM package, and React Router DOM, React Router Native. These two are for the browser and for React Native. So one is for the browser and one is for mobile, and they both use React Router as the core package. So as we're building for the browser, I think we're going to be mostly working with React Router DOM. Cool. So to do this, let's install React Router DOM. So cd. Let's do this. You guys can play around with me if you want. Just start hacking together, and maybe we can continue on this. So this could be the exercise we're going to work on today. So exercise. So install React Router DOM. Cool. Let's start the admin.
Sorry.
Boss. So I started the app and should get running in a second. Already have a port, so I have it running somewhere. Cool. So this is the basics of the router. This is basically what we're going to work with. We have the router tag. In our case, that's the browser router we're going to use for the browser. And we define some routes. and the components that they're gonna render. So if you go to slash, you render the home component. If you go to category, you render category. If you go to login, you render login, etc. So to do this, we need to have the router, and the router here is an alias. We have two kind of routers in React Router, a browser router and a hash router. The browser one is the one that you're used to, which is just slash anything you want, and that's the HTML one. And then there's the hash router, anything that comes after the hash. I think you guys might have seen it in Angular or other libraries that use the hash router. I recommend using the browser router, the one that all of us are used to. You can read more about this, but people use it if you have old browsers and that you want to support this in old browsers, then you use the hash router. But I think in our case, the browser router would just do just fine.
But should we install the DOM router or just router?
No, the React router DOM. And React router DOM will internally, it will require the React router as a dependency.
Okay.
So we're not going to use it, so it's going to be used indirectly. Cool. So we have this, we started the app, let's see what's going on. Let's go another tab. So we have this, and it renders in app.js. So we want to get started. So here in the index it says, we just need to import browser router and then wrap everything with the browser router. So we're going to do this. So I'm just going to go to our source index, and this is where we render our app, and I'm going to import browser router from React Router DOM, and then I'm going to wrap my app with it.
We have two packages install React Router DOM and React Router.
So say again?
Are we installing two packages?
No, I installed only one. I installed only React Router DOM.
Oh.
I just said the React Router is the core library, that's the engine, if you can say. And then they have two other libraries built on top of that. React Router DOM, DOM is for the browser DOM, and React Router Native for React Native. So they have this thing, that the core library, that it's just the logic, and then they built two things on top of it that are actually usable. One for mobile using React Native, and one for the DOM. And now we're building for the browser, so we're using the DOM version. And that was the same as Darian's question, like why not use React Router? Because React Router is the core library. We might use it in the future, but we actually need the DOM. We need the stuff that works with the DOM. And if you look, just a second, I'm just going to finish this. If you go to the yarn.log, which saves all the dependencies, if you type React Router, you're going to see we're using React Router DOM. And in its dependencies, we have the React Router. So it is installed, but we're just not directly referencing it. If we need it, we're going to install it, but it is there. Sorry, there.
Yeah. So we have these components, but what if that we want to create a new file that just includes JavaScript, just JavaScript, like not Node, not React, and like you can do in this file you can say get document about ID, so it goes with this components, and then take this element out.
So you want to build a router without React?
No, it's not about router. Because I always think about I want to create a new file like main.js, and that file should include just the JavaScript, not like React components or something else. Just JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. You know what I mean?
No.
It's like build files use vanilla JavaScript
Okay.
syntax.
Okay.
Don't use any React syntax.
Yeah.
How could we do that?
Like, what's the target? Do you want to build?
Like I want to get.
I get the concept, but do you want to build an app with React, or just build an app completely without React, or that's just a library, or
No,
is the
because-
front end library? Is it?
Yeah, because I created like a menu with React, and then I can in the React component in this React file I can't say get document by tech tag name, so alias, so it takes all of alias. It doesn't do that, and when I also write at event listener, I use at the event listener function, and then in the React file, it comes an error and say this function is not defined.
Well, if it's not defined, you have to define it globally. But then we would have to check how the React thing works. Yeah, well, let's look at it together in a break or something.
Yes.
So you just want to have a vanilla JS functions and you can use everywhere, right?
Yeah, like you just one file and use it in all components. Like you can use it, take the element out of all components. Like.
Does this function uses the DOM elements or not?
Yeah, like use the DOM elements. What do you mean? I didn't get it.
Well, if like you can have something called lib, and inside lib you can have like a function, like a helper function, helper.js, or helpers.js, whatever, and then you could have a function here and export it. So you could export default sum, or just a function directly that takes x and y, and it would return x plus y. Then you can import this. You can import this in any other package. So let's give this a try. We're gonna import some from dot slash, actually dot slash lib slash sum. And then here we're gonna render. Sorry, just a second. So here it renders 11. Is this what you meant?
Yeah, like so, but what if now I use like I want in this file I want to get the li tags in the React component. It's possible.
Well, let's look at the example. Maybe there's something that I saw we
Yeah,
could
we
just
can
say.
do it after.
But you can definitely write code outside in vanilla JavaScript and work with React. But it might be a special case in the thing that you meant, or the library that builds your app, or some context, or something. Cool. So we have this. Now we want to import the browser router in our index.js, and we did that from React Router DOM, and we wrapped our app in the browser router. So everything is in the browser router now. Cool. So this is just quick notes. It says here that the router needs to have only one child. So it cannot have multiple children inside. It needs to have only one thing inside it. Could be a div, and then the div contains other stuff, and this is the case. This is the case here. So this is just explaining what we did. So the code above creates an instance of history of our entire app component. Let me formally introduce you history. So history is another library by the same company that created React Router, and it lets you manage the history of the browser history and go back and forth and change the stuff that you can see here. So you can play around with this. So if we keep navigating to other pages, this is the history here. Just grows, and you can play with it, remove stuff, go back in history, update the latest or the last page in the history. You can read more about the docs here and from the same company React training.
It's also part of routing.
Yes, but like this is not the basic usage, so I don't think we're going to use it today. So this is when you have something and you want to replace the location in the history, that like the current link, you don't want to keep adding in the history. This is when you're using something and you're using back and forth, and like you can update the location and do stuff with it, and you can go back in history and go forward. But we're not going to use it that much, and I don't think basic usages would use that. So just to simplify things and get started with it, I'm gonna like leave it to you to read about it. So links and routes. Okay, I wanna start with this. So I'm gonna pause this for a while, and then I'm gonna go to the app.js. And now let's consider our app.js is the main thing. And instead of having app, we're gonna have home.js, and home.js is gonna render the same thing. So I'm gonna rename or copy this and call it home. And then in our app.js, I wanna create the routing stuff. So let's copy the code from the routing. So this should be our basic router. We don't have all of this. So now let's remove the exact. So our router now is very simple. Our app.js is inside the browser router, and this is our routes. And you can add routes in multiple, like in nested pages. Well, it doesn't have to be in the main app.js. It could be in any layer. And then we have only one route. When the path is slash, which is the index, we're gonna render the component called home, and then we're just gonna.
Are we inside app.js file?
Sorry, say again.
Are we inside app.js file?
Yes. Now we're inside app.js. Just gonna make this even simpler. So I move the code from app.js to home.js, and then I'm gonna import home. And I added just one route. When we are in the slash page, slash root, go to the component called home. And I imported home here, and I just reference it in this route. Anything complex? Let's see if it's working.
Yeah, just what is in there.
So here it says router is not defined. Oh, we already have the router, so it's actually simpler than that. So just route. And then we need to import the route from React router done. So the router was actually a mistake. So the router, they used to import the router like this, router as router. So there's nothing called router actually. It's just either browser router or hash router, and they would rename it as router just for simplicity. And we already have the browser router wrapping everything, so we're not gonna do it again. So you could see it like that. I prefer using the browser router. And in app.js, we already have the router wrapping everything. So now we just have a route. And a route is just the path. We have the slash.
Yeah.
Router is in which file?
Is in the index.js. It traps the whole app, traps everything.
Index.
What is in home.js?
Home.js is what was in app.js. So in app.js, like when you create a new Create React app, you have this basic logo and title and the normal one you see when you create a new Create React app. I just moved it to home.js.
Oh, yeah, just copy it.
So
Exactly. I copied the file, renamed it, and that's it.
Oh, yeah. So we should do that. Can you go to home.js, please?
we are playing with two files, I think now. We have index.js and app.js.
Yes. So in index.js, all I did here is I wrapped everything in browser router. That's it. And in app.js, I added one route. How's it going for you guys? Cool. Well, how about this? How about we focus here and then we go back and exercise that?
Yeah.
Because I'm confused.
Okay,
The
so
files are not arranged. I have things I see there. I have in app.js. I have them in the index.js.
well,
I
the
have
thing
in
is because when you're looking at the keyboard, looking at the computer, and doing other stuff, so I think this is not gonna work. So it was a mistake for me to ask you guys to do it. So let's. Do you want to start from scratch?
No, just be. It's okay.
Please say if you're confused.
Yeah, let's start again.
Let's start again. Okay. So we're gonna start from here. We're gonna create a React app. Let's call it router or our router. I'm gonna cd in our router. I'm gonna yarn and yarn start. Let's close this. So let's wait for this to start. Cool. So if you look at the documentation, you can just follow it from the top, and we have an empty project, and we import, create the React router DOM. It's already started. Okay, that's good. So I'm just gonna put connect, get dot, get connect, initial connect. Then we're gonna npm i-s. Now we're installing the React router DOM. You can see. How's that working? I think it's just hanging for some reason. Cool. So you can see now that we have the added the history, it added other stuff, and we have our React router DOM. So we're gonna add this step. Get commit -m edit React router DOM package. Then now we want to wrap everything in the index.js with the browser router. So now we know that we have something from React router DOM, that's the library we're using. And then we have a browser router and a hash router. The browser router is the normal one we're used to. The hash router is everything in the hash. So I'm just going to import the browser router. In the tutorial, they renamed the browser router to router. We're not going to do this. So we're just going to use browser router, and then we're going to wrap everything in browser router. So we're going to do this. Then we're going to wrap our app in browser router. If this is a little bit confusing,
You have already closed it up in the browser.
yeah. So if this is confusing, we can move it to another package or something. But this is just a component. Instead of passing the app, we're passing a browser router wrapping the app. So now our app is ready to have routes, and I want to have a /route. The routes defined in a file rendering a file somewhere else. So everything was rendered in app.js. But what if our app.js doesn't have the thing? So let's start with something else. Let's start with another route. Let's start with a route called about the JS. And let's do some stuff. Let's import React from React. And then now we're going to export default. We're going to return a dev, and inside this dev, like I'm just going to say hey from the about page. So we want this to be rendered when we have the /about section. So very dumb. I'm just going to add code now to the about page. It didn't add anything. So I added the browser router. And I want to add something. Actually, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but let's try. So we need the route. Route is like the /about. This is the route. So we're going to import route from the same library. Create React router DOM, and then we're going to add a route here with the path equals /about. If we are in the /about route, render the component about, and we need to import about here. So we're going to import about from /about.js. So we have a component, a very simple component, and we imported this component, and we added this to the path /about. Could be anything. So just whatever we want. So let's go to anything in the browser, and then it breaks because I didn't export as usual. No, I did export, but I didn't return. So anything, and it didn't work. Okay, bad demo. Oh, not bad demo. Hey, from the about page. So this is unusual. No, not unusual. We did this in the about page. So in app.js, it rendered all of this stuff. Then in the route, it rendered the component, because we have this, it rendered the component here when the path matched anything. So it changes the about, it doesn't make sense. Now the router, anything doesn't match anything, so it rendered the app, but the section with the about, it didn't render anything here, because I changed it to about again. So go to about, it renders it. So now we have the main thing, and the route gets rendered when it only matches what we wrote. So what if I want to change the whole page? Then I gotta move the rest of this somewhere else. So let's do this. Let's copy this file to home.js and remove the stuff that we did. And home.js now has everything that was in app.js before the changes. And I'm gonna remove this stuff from app.js. Just gonna delete the route. So now if I go to slash, doesn't render anything. If I go to /about, the route gets rendered. Hey, this is /about. I'm gonna render the about component. Let's add another one. Let's add another one called contact. So we have a contact component somewhere, and let's copy this called contact from the contact page. And now we need to wrap our elements in another div. So now in about, if we go to contact, we have the contact page. That's cool. What if I want to switch between these pages? So now we know how to have a basic route in app.js. And if we go to about, it renders about. If we go to contact, it renders contact. What if I want to render something in the slash? So I'm going to add a route to the path equals slash. I'm going to render the component, guess what? Home. So I'm going to go here, and I need to import home. Home from ./home. So all what we did now is in app.js we defined our routes. When you go to slash, that's the index or the root, you render component. When you go to /about, it renders about. When you go to /contact, it renders /contact. What if we want to render multiple routes or multiple components per route? Is this possible? Yes. And now we're going to see a weird behavior. If we go to /about, what do you expect to see when we go to /about now?
About component.
Only?
About the content.
Only the content about page. But we're going to see actually two things. We're going to see this and the about. And this is the next thing. So now I'm showing you before I explain what happened. So now when it went here, does this slash exists in the URL, this?
Which one?
The /about, does it exist in this URL?
Yeah.
It does. So it matched with the slash. So now it uses the regex to see if you have slash, then render. And if you have /about, it renders. And weirdly enough, if you have
But if we
Another-
go slash contact, still it brings the home page and contact page.
Exactly, because the slash exists in both of them. So if I want the slash to only render the home page and nothing else, only the slash, and not any trailing characters. So I can add the exact thing. So when it's exact, it has to match slash without anything after the slash. So it's not. It doesn't mean starts with a slash and continue. There's no. It has to be exact, like slash and only slash. So if we go back, slash about, because slash about now is not exactly slash, so it doesn't render. So we can play around with this. If we have slash contacts slash other stuff, we can gather our routes. So far, is anything confusing? Is it clear? Do you guys understand the use of it? Why would we need such a library or such a tool? Cool. You get the concept so far? Have any questions? Cool. Anything weird? Anything I'm missing?
Let's go to contact file.
It's a component. Could be Isaac component that renders Isaac's image.
I was looking at the name you import on the, is it up? Yes. Is in small letters contact. I don't know whether you have to match it with a name from the other file.
No, it could be here.
You can put anything.
Isaac is awesome,
What matters is the.
and then Isaac is awesome renders about. It could be anything. You define it.
I'm saying if now you change the name, can it still bring contact? Or
You could do whatever you want. So you write a string here, and then now it renders about. Now I'm going to change it to render contact.
so the path does not make
No, could be underscore 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it renders anything you want. So you just have a string. This is a static string. Let's say when I go to this route or this route, render this component. That's it. So when you want to show the about page, you have this slash about because it makes sense. And you name it about because you don't want to confuse yourself. You could name it with your name, but then you're not going to be able to categorize stuff. So naming here is just a way of organization, but no, that doesn't have to be exactly it. It makes it easier for you to develop, but it's definitely not a requirement. So it could be contact, could be contacts, could be any other thing you want. And this is just a component name. That's a good question. Cool. So now we learned the exact. So the exact, if we have about and slash about slash FAQ, and we have a page called FAQ, and it can be FAQ page, and then an abject.js. So if the FAQ is under about, and we have the URL like this, and we go to slash about, it's going to render about. If we go to slash about slash FAQ, it's going to render both of them. So I need to change this to render FAQ. So now it's going to render both of them because this URL matches with slash about and slash FAQ. But if I want to render slash about when it's only slash about, then I add the exact thing. So this is just to explain what is the exact property. The exact, you could write it like that, or you could write it equals true, or could write it exact equals false, which just don't write it if you don't want to, but this is to change it programmatically. Now it's going to go back to, it's going to only render when it's in the about page. Cool. So what else? We need to have links. We need to be able to change between these pages. So we have something called link that we could use. So I want to be able to switch between about and contact pages. So I'm going to go to about and I'm going to import link from, again, React router DOM, and I'm gonna add a link here, and this link will be 2, and 2 is a property that it takes. And now I'm gonna write a string of the route that I wanna go to. So I'm in the about, so I wanna click, so this link will be go to contact page, and I want this to go to /contact.
Can we do it with A tags?
Well, you could grab any tag. So you like, what do you want? Do you want it to be a button or?
No, just can we do it with A tag, because A tags also have href, so we can move to.
A.
Actually, I don't know. But I think the link you might need the link to work probably with the history of the React router. But I think it would work. So let's try both of them. Let's go to /about/FAQ. And then we're gonna have the A and go to FAQ. So we're gonna go to /about, and we need so the first one is the one with the link. When I'm gonna click on it, it's gonna switch to /contact page. And the other one is go to FAQ, is with an href. Click on it, again, change.
Let's go to about.
I think one of them, like the A is not gonna work with the history, but I'm not sure. What?
Nothing.
But that is a very good question. So React router version 4, why use link and not a tag? React link versus a tag and arrow function. So we have the about, and then we have our route, and then we have some links to home, about, teachers, courses, and the error I'm getting cannot get /about browser, blah blah blah. And on the surface you seem to be comparing apples and oranges here. The password in your anchor tag is relative path, while the one in the link is absolute. Rightly so. I don't think React router supports relative path yet. I didn't know that. Okay. How old is this answer? It's relatively new. Okay. And clicking on the href page will take you to the pla/page. So when you type something, so if we did FAQ like that, so the FAQ, you just type FAQ and not /about/FAQ. Okay, that was incorrect. So what he was saying, if we were the href was FAQ, it was going to take us to /about/FAQ, but that's not true, or at least in our case. This may not be an issue though, since you confirmed the correctness of the URL. A bit deeper difference when you just want an add-on answer and those point to the industry already around. The link points to says we're currently on /page, and the link points to /page, or even /page, or this one trigger a full page refresh. Tag not free well. Okay. So we have two differences now. The first one is that the link will not trigger a full page refresh. So I think it's going to work to render on the client side. So let's try this. We did not see any loading here. Let's try the other. We saw the whole browser page loading. So this could be faster. So this is the first difference. The second difference is, which we did not get to yet. What if you want to send parameters? What if we were in users page, and when we click on the link, imagine a link here that says user with an ID, and we want user the ID of the user. You can do this easily with the link to in React router. So you can send properties with names and receive this and read this props from the URL, and you define them in the root. And I think we will use this a lot today, and we can definitely try it. So let's recap quickly what we learned and take a little break and come back and study a little bit more. So we looked at how to plug it in a React app. We looked in like how to route the browser router and how to have one root and what's the difference between slash and slash about. And if we have slash, then it uses a regex and it's going to match anything that starts with a slash, and how to use the exact property, and how to have multiple routes and link between pages with static path. So far, so good. Have any questions? Cool. Let's take a little break and come back and play around with properties.